Welcome back to another episode of Transcriber from Reddit. Today's topic comes from the subreddit FundieSnarkUncensored, posted by user Mission Statistician. It was posted 26 days ago. It is an image post that is titled Morality as a Concept Among American Fundamentalist Evangelicals. And it has a bright green tag labeled Generally Speaking. There are 17 images overall, and as of recording, this has 767 upvotes and 56 comments. I will be covering the images primarily speaking because it has some key points about morality and how it links to American fundamentalist evangelicals. To the first image, we see the start of a Twitter thread by Dr. Laura Robinson, or at Laura RBNSN. In her first tweet, she says, "Okay, so here's the thing. In the historical tradition and in the global scene, evangelicalism is a diverse movement, and I'm not speaking about the whole field, parentheses, which continues to shape my theology, end parentheses. But in American evangelicalism right now, in the way you will primarily see," moving on to the second image, "it practiced, there is no such thing as a moral or immoral action. There are immoral and moral star people and star groups and star, not behaviors." Side note, from the words there to the end words not behaviors is completely underlined in blue. I continue reading. "The question is never, quote, did this person commit rape, end quote, or, quote, did this person cheat, end quote. It's, quote, where is that person situated, end quote, and that determines whether," moving on to the third image, "whether they can plausibly be called a rapist or a cheater, and," here starts the underline again, "the amount of evidence required to assign the label varies depending on who that person is," end underline. Moving on to the fourth image. "The label of, quote, pedophile, end quote, groomer, end quote, and, quote, rapist, end quote, as you often see it in popular evangelical discourse, really doesn't depend much at all whether that person has actually committed any of those acts. And you can absolutely rape someone in evangelical spaces," moving on to the fifth image, "without being a rapist, paradoxically. It's because the labels are assigned to describe in-group and out-groups, not the actual behavior. There's definitely some vague sense that out-group figures who get the label are guilty of those things, but it's usually pretty abstracted," moving on to the sixth image, "and there's not really evidence involved in assigning it. And of course, on the flip side," here begins the underline, "there's no amount of evidence that can make an in-group member a, quote, rapist, end quote, or a, quote, groomer, end quote, end underline. That's why people will still be shocked if you say that Trump is a rapist, despite the fact," moving on to the seventh image, "that a court said he was a rapist, several women said he was a rapist, and Trump said he was a rapist. A significant number of evangelicals will be at pains to explain why none of that data applies in his situation, because he simply cannot possibly be a rapist, and no evidence that he raped someone could move that needle. The only thing that could move the needle is Trump becoming an out-group member." Side note, we're on the eighth image now. "Or somehow unprofitable from the community that has rallied around him. Because there is no wrong action, only wrong people." Moving on to the ninth image. "I mean, I even saw this last week with the number of DMs I got with the messages along the lines of, quote, your body, my choice, bitch, end quote. And then you click on the profile, and the bio is something along the lines of, quote, I'm a man who loves Jesus and tries to obey God every day, end quote." Moving on to the 10th image. Here begins underline section. The idea that an evangelical man's behavior would be in any way bounded by the restrictions of the religion is just completely off the table, and underlined. Because he can't do bad things, because there are no bad behaviors from his perspective, only insiders and outsiders. Moving on to the 11th image. There are men right now who make rape threats on Saturday and go to church on Sunday and can't be called out not because they're hiding their hypocrisy, but because they have been taught through their Christian leaders that the concept of right and wrong literally does not apply. Moving on to the 12th image. To them. Begin underline. They do not think they can do something wrong. End underline. They have no concept of right and wrong, and their faith tradition is, on the whole, upholding that for them. Moving on to the 13th image. There's no one person who made the bet that American evangelicals would be better off if they hashed the concepts of right and wrong in exchange for political power, cultural power, money, getting young men in churches, whatever. But enough people did make that bet that, moving on to the 14th image, that's just where we are now. It's gone. American evangelical morality is mostly dismantled. We have a shrinking but entire generation with no concept of it. We are the relativists we feared. Moving on to the 15th image. I don't even know what it would mean to turn it around at this point. As Tyrion Lannister would put it, it's hard to put a leash on a dog once you've put a crown on its head. Once you've assured a large portion of the population that their job is to enjoy authority with no, moving on to the 16th image, responsibility, and they owe nothing to anyone except being publicly entitled and special, and that they have nothing to learn from anyone and nothing to change, I have no idea how to walk that back. Moving on to the last and final image, we see the profile picture of Dr. Laura Robinson. Again, at Laura RBNSN. At NT Review Pod, also on Blue Sky, same handle. PhD New Testament, Duke. Follow for New Testament, theology, crochet, pop culture, excessive cat documentation. And then below that is linked her Laura RBNSN Substack.com. I particularly want to highlight a comment she made. Back in image 14, where she made the comment, "We are the relativists we feared." If you're listening to this, raise your hand if you heard it iterated over and over again as you were growing up, or even as a young adult or just an adult in church. If you heard it iterated over and over again, that America is a growing nation of relativists, and that Americans don't see a matter of right and wrong, and how only the church is left to save America. Also, leave a comment down below if this was your reality. I know it was for me. Growing up, I heard it a lot in church and in the religious schools I went to, as well in the religious radio that I was brought up listening to, and that I later consumed. Isn't it ironic that the ones who proclaimed about relativism had no problem being relativistic with their own morality when it came time to elect a president? Especially considering what they said about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. Isn't it ironic that their claims for morality and relativism ultimately come to point back at them as being the culprits? And I'm talking at the institutions and the people behind those institutions who very much are happy that they will be able to have, for the most part right now, some unlimited amount of freedom to discuss their support for Project 2025 and what that will look like for America. I truly hope and pray that they do not enact most of that Project 2025. But there are no guarantees. Also, I can only hope and pray that people are seeing what Project 2025 means for America. That concludes this video. Thanks for watching/listening, and I will see you in the next one.